for taking the time out of your afternoon. My goal really for tonight is to educate and inspire and get you fired up to leave with some tips and tricks for how you can use food to improve your athletic performance and your overall health this season. We have a lot to get through tonight, this afternoon, so please stay quiet, participate, and just absorb all the knowledge. A little bit about myself. So I am originally from New Hampshire. I grew up ski racing just in your shoes. So I went to Green Mountain Valley School. I did the state circuit, the regional circuit, the national circuit, then on to the US ski team. When I finished up my time with the ski team, I went and raced for the University of Denver, moved out west, had an amazing experience with a different team environment there. And then I went on to kind of combine my two passions. I used my nutrition education and certified personal training to coach U16, U14, FIT, and also working as the director of nutrition back in Vermont in GMBS. So that was my goal, was like throughout my career I started to get more passionate about how can I improve my performance, what little things can I start to hyper-focus on so I can be a better ski racer. And I fell in love with the food and movement part of things. How can I double down on my training? How can I maximize my training with my nutrition? Things like that. How can I stay fresh and recovered at a high altitude camp or when I have a week-long race series? And all of that came down to taking care of my hydration, the food that I put in my body, my sleep, and all of those things. So then I moved to Teton Valley, and I get to put it all together. I run my own nutrition practice, Peak Athlete, where I get to work with athletes like you and beyond. So when you retire as well, learning how to use fuel and movement to perform your best in life, whatever your goals may be. All right? So I feel pretty lucky to do what I do. To get started, we're going to go over a few basics, and then we'll dive into some nitty-gritty, how you can apply food and nutrition to fuel your performance and enhance your performance. And then we'll end with a little snack activity for all of you, and you get to take your worksheets as well. So follow along. Some stuff I'll stop and reference the worksheet. Some stuff you'll just kind of follow along and answer the questions as I'm speaking. All right? So nutrition. Kind of a confusing topic. Some people may find it pretty boring. I like to keep it fun and simple. What is it anyway? Really, it's the study of food. Everything we put in our bodies, every little thing that we eat and drink, but how it works on our body. That's kind of what we lose focus on, and that's where you can really capitalize on that as athletes. If you figure out how your food choices work in your body and not look at them just as food or as delicious food, right? That's where you can gain that competitive advantage and really notice the performance benefits. Why is it important for you guys as athletes? There's so many reasons, but a few that might pertain to you. Fueling our movement and our training, right? So we're going to talk about what macronutrients fuel our muscles, actually give energy to our muscles and to our brain to power everything that we do day in and day out. Our competition, our races, our trainings, things like that. Powering our brain as athletes, ski racers, the visualization, the mental toughness, the focus, the lots of new joiners, hello. Muscle memory, right? If you're learning a new skill or trying to try a new line in training, things like that. So much brain power that's required. And staying positive, because we have a lot of down days in this sport. It beats us down more than it builds us up. So how can we be taking care of our brain health, fueling our brain, so that we can overcome those challenges, right? Balancing our hormones, those control things like our appetite, our mood, our sleep, our growth and recovery, so much. Growth and development, recovery and repair. So on a day-to-day basis, you're breaking down your muscle fibers, and we need to build them back up. So you're in an anabolic state, building up those muscle fibers, getting strong, and breaking those down in our training. So you're in this constant anabolic and catabolic state. We need our nutrition to fuel that. And if you put all those pieces together, it's a competitive advantage, all right? You're staying healthy. You're not getting sick and missing races and missing training days. You're fueling your training properly. So you're recovering faster, so you don't have to miss a day because you're tired. or feeling sore, or things like that, right? Our time on snow is gold. You're all about to head to Colorado pretty shortly here. That's going to be high altitude, demanding camp. And when you can put these tools into practice and take care of your bodies, you won't miss time off snow, and you'll be feeling your best. You just keep getting better and better, enhancing your performance, right? All right. So what is nutrition? Why is it important? I haven't seen many pens moving, but I know those are on those sheets. All right. Just a quick side note here. Quality truly does matter. There's a time and a place for some of our more convenient packaged items that we might throw in our backpack or find on the road or at a convenience store. Absolutely. But the majority of the time, if we can remember this, if it comes from the earth, if it's a plant, right, in its whole form, go for it. Those are going to provide so many nutrients for our body to do all those things we just talked about on this last slide, all right? If it's made in a plant, maybe try to avoid it. When's the right time to have it? And we'll talk about all that, all right? But if you can really think of that car analogy, you got to put the right gas in the car for it to run optimally. Same goes for our food, to keep it simple, all right? So, macronutrients. I'm sure we've all heard of these in some way, shape, or form, but maybe it's a little confusing. Maybe we're not sure what foods fall under these categories. So a little basics for us. I've underlined some main things that you can write on your sheets to remember, because there's so many roles of these macronutrients, these nutrients that we need in large quantities. But these are the heavy hitters for you, all right? So carbohydrates. Who's heard of a carbohydrate? Not many hands. All right, cool. A few, I love it. So for carbohydrates, something that you can remember, they're so important for athletes because they are the primary fuel for our muscles and our brain, okay? And the stored form of those carbohydrates, so if you eat oats, for example, your body's gonna break them down and store it as energy in your muscles and in your liver. That stored form is glucose, all right? And those little facts are gonna be really important a little bit further throughout the presentation. Carbohydrates, not only are their primary source of fuel, but they're our most accessible. They're our quickest source of fuel, all right? So really important if you're thinking about, I'm getting tired or I'm about to go to training or have a race, I need a little snack and need a little energy, what am I gonna go for? Start to remember this, all right? It's our primary and quickest and easiest fuel source to tap into in our bodies, all right? Other good things about it though, all right? Our fibers, so our fruit and our veggies, those fall under carbohydrates. They're great sources and they provide a lot of nutrients for our overall health, our immune system, our microbiome, things like that. And then also, carbohydrates are used with protein and fat to help us fight infections, grow new body tissues, et cetera, et cetera. But really important as athletes, it's our fuel source, right? So we need it, and we need it in large quantities. Proteins, the building blocks, all right? Proteins are the building blocks. They're building, maintaining, and repairing our muscles, our tendons, our tissues, our skin, everything, right? We break those proteins down in our body and we need to build them back up. This is gonna be huge for recovery, right, as athletes. Huge, huge, huge. We'll get to that in a little bit. Fat, sort of the unsung hero we don't talk about all the time, all right? Super important as an energy source as well, although it's not our primary energy source. It's a really efficient energy source. So if you think about aerobic activity, more for our Nordic athletes, but really important for ski racers when you have a long day outside, are we getting some fat into our snacks and our meals? Why is this important? So it's going to provide that. If you think of a fire, I think of fat as like the big log that you put on the fire that burns all night. It's not the little kindling and little sticks and leaves that we put on and it just creates a big flame and then dies out. That's more the carbohydrates, okay? If you think about that energy system, the fats are those big logs that are going to provide you energy all day long, okay? Huge for alpine athletes. Our days are very long. You might load the lift at 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning. You might be done standing for the award ceremony around 4 p.m. Really long days. If you're just feeding yourself carbohydrates, you're going to get energy and crash, okay? So remember those fats. But I've underlined Something about inflammation with fats, because it's something we don't always talk about, and inflammation is huge as athletes. Not just when you think of inflammation for injury, but anytime you go to a training session and you're working those muscles, you're creating natural inflammation, and we want to move, we want to anti-inflame as well, and we'll hold on to that inflammation if we're not getting adequate fats. So really cool to think about how we can recover faster and support our natural inflammatory response, getting some good fats, which we'll talk about a little bit later. It makes food taste good too. So, our sheets, macronutrients. Boys, let's get some pens. Okay, so how do we put what we just talked about, macronutrients, how do we build a meal with that knowledge, right? Because we need to have 3 solid meals a day to create our foundation of nutrients and nutrition, right? And we'll also need snacks, we'll talk about it. But a basic meal building template. Start with a good protein source, and we'll talk about what that might be, okay? Maybe you're writing down what your favorite protein source is before we get there, and then you can compare and see if it's on the sheet. Then you're gonna add some colors, so our fruits and our veggies, those are gonna be our fibers, our carbohydrates, like we just talked about. Then you're gonna add some complex carbohydrates, we'll talk about what that is, I'll give some examples. And then you're gonna make sure you have some healthy fats. So the equation is carbohydrates, protein, fat, and fiber, which you'll see on this next slide. That's going to be the components of a balanced meal, an athlete's plate or a performance plate, as I like to call it. So, carbs, protein, fat, fiber. That's your power plate or performance plate. When do you want these meals? You want them when you have enough time to digest them. So we're thinking breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right? Outside of training time. So if you have 2.5 to 3 hours before your training or your race, this is a great time to make a plate like this with all of these components, okay? So, a couple things to note. Your plate needs to change based on your training or race, the intensity and the duration. So start to think about, what do we have today, all right? And how do I need to adjust how much I'm eating and what I'm eating to accommodate that. I see a lot of athletes eat the same thing in the same amounts every single day. So if you can start to think about this a little bit more into your meals, you're gaining a huge competitive advantage. So on an easy or off day, for example, what do we notice? What takes up half our plate? Anyone see? Yes.
Like fruits and veggies?
Fruits and veggies, ton of color on that plate, right? And that's because it provides so many nutrients, but it takes a long time to digest. So on our easy and off days, great time to load up on all your favorite fruits and veggies, a good source of protein, and some complex carbohydrate. On your moderate days, what increases? Who can see? Carbs, complex carbs, right? They increase a bit more. Why? Off day versus moderate day.
Oh, it's easier to digest.
Yep, and did your training load increase from easy to moderate? Totally. What do you notice for heart?
So
Half your plate, right? What's one of your favorite carbohydrate sources? Bread. Okay, cool. We'll talk about those on the next slide. So can you see how this kind of changes? So on easy days, really focus on your fruits and veggies. Your protein kind of stays the same. Complex carbs shrink a little bit, and we're getting good sources of fat. As your training intensity increases, what increases? Carbs, complex carbs, exactly. And what might decrease just a touch? All that plant matter. Yeah.
Yeah, proteins, right?
Proteins, yeah, a little bit, for sure, but you want it at every meal, right? All right. Are we filling that out in our sheets? These are some examples, all right? So if you need some tips and tricks on examples for your sheets, I'm sure you recognize a few of these. Maybe you didn't know they fell into these categories. And this is just scratching the surface, but maybe some common ones, okay? I feel like we do a pretty decent job with carbohydrates. Maybe we don't adjust them according to our training. But are we missing good sources of protein and healthy fat potentially? Are we missing color and fiber potentially? Filling that out. good. These are gonna be really like your breakfast, lunch, and your dinner. We're gonna move into pre-training or pre-race snack, okay? But this is the foundation. Again, if you have any questions that come up, write them on those sheets and we'll hit them at the end. All right, pre-training.
What'd you get for those carbs?
So the goal of pre-training nutrition, so you ate your meal 2.5 to 3 hours before your training or competition, okay? So if you're an alpine athlete, you're thinking, all right, our first run is at 9 a.m. When should we be having breakfast? 6-ish, yep. 6:30, right, in that window, nice job. Good, so are we waking up with ample time to get a balanced breakfast? No. Potentially, okay? Start to think about that. Because in another slide we'll talk about the rate of digestion. So if you're eating a big breakfast within a shorter window, you can't utilize those nutrients necessarily. You don't have enough time. Okay, so our choices are going to change. But the main goal for pre-training, so you ate that big breakfast, then you got to the mountain, you loaded the lift, you did your warm-up, you did your inspection, now you're waiting around for that first run. Now you're within a 1 hour window of that first run, maybe 30 minutes, maybe 20 minutes. You're gonna maybe need a little snack so you have ample energy stores for your first run, okay? The main goal here is to top off those glycogen stores in our muscles and in our liver, right? So glycogen is that stored form of energy from our carbohydrate. And you used some of that between breakfast and your first run. So we just want to top off the tank, all right? Before you go on a road trip, you want to just stop at the gas station, top off your tank, and then you're ready to go. This works the same, all right? So glycogen is our stored form. You want to get a pre-training or pre-race snack. Okay, so think about this in your training off the hill. Right now your schedule, you're going to school all day long, and then you come here for an afternoon session of training before dinner, right? Are you hitting a pre-training snack? What time does training start? 4? Yep. Are you getting something before that window? Okay? And what are you choosing? So pre-training fuel, diving into it a little deeper. So that's within that 1 hour window. Okay, so if you're training at 4, are you getting a snack around 3:30 right now before you go to camp? The goal is to top off those energy stores, okay? And a little buzzword tip to think about is the rate of mouth to muscle. So how quick our food can get from our mouth to our muscles, okay? What is that quick energy we talked about? Carbs. What's the slow energy? Big walk. Fat. Good. Okay, great. So mouth to muscle, if we have within a 1 hour window, what are we choosing? Banana is a great choice, yeah, but it's carbohydrate, awesome. So sometimes those sport foods come into play. Sometimes that's gonna be our fruit, gummies, dried fruit, things like that. Simple carbohydrates, and I'll give you some more examples. We wanna keep the protein, fat, and fiber low in this snack. Those are really important, but not right now within that 1 hour window before an intense training session or race, okay? Before we go down the course. Generally, you're avoiding things like spicy foods that might cause digestive distress, high fiber foods, like maybe not the time to snack on a bunch of veggies and hummus. Maybe avoid some beans, maybe you don't do great with dairy, right? Things to think about. And then we want to hit hydration. Today we're not going to dive into hydration, but it's a big piece of the pre-training fuel, getting that water bottle in, okay? So have a water bottle, have a snack at school, so at 3 p.m. you can have something and be ready to rock for your training. Cool? All right. Rate of mouth to muscle, the rate of digestion. So those simple carbs are the fastest. The complex carbs, like brown rice, for example, or a piece of wheat bread, that's going to be fast, but not as fast. It's going to take more time for you to access that energy. Protein, going to be slow, all right? So if we're having a big protein bar, protein shake, or, steak or eggs or something like that, right before training, it might not feel so good. It might not provide a lot of energy for us, okay? But we might want to save that for our meal. Fat is slow and fiber is the slowest, okay? Has anyone had like a stomach stitch like under your ribs when you've exercised or had running? Yep. Yeah, maybe our pre-training fuel or meal, whatever it may be, was a little bit too tough to digest. I've been there for sure. All right. Some of my favorite pre-training snacks. Things to think about. These are simple things, easy to access, easy to find. Fruit leathers can be great, or a piece of fruit like a banana. Fig bars, something along that nature. Fruit juice can be quick for your energy system. This might be a time where you're not choosing a really high protein Greek yogurt, but something else. Bread, applesauce, rice, potatoes, things like that. You can make a really nice simple smoothie, keeping it with fruit, maybe a little yogurt or a little milk, but easy to digest, quick sources of carbohydrate, 30 to 60 minutes before your training, okay? Sticking to whole foods as much as possible, but obviously there's going to be a time and a place to just have some quick sources of energy and snacks in your backpack, just in case, okay? Especially while we're traveling. All right, so what does that look like for us? What does that look like? So up above, you're in that 2.5 to 3 hour window. These look more like meals, right? Something you have at breakfast or lunch, maybe at dinner, breakfast sandwich, okay? If you're within that 1 hour window, there might be too much going on to have a breakfast sandwich. Try to allow enough time. But why might it be a good choice? You have some carbohydrates that are easy to digest. You have some protein and fat from the egg and maybe bacon or cheese. And yeah, you've hit all the macronutrients, carbohydrates, proteins, and fat. Maybe you're having some oatmeal with some nuts and berries, okay, some eggs, and toast with honey or nut butter and some banana. Cool. Maybe you're building like a rice bowl with eggs, you've got fat from the avocado, and some color. You have plenty of time to digest the fruits and veggies and things like that. There's a lot more going on up top than in that 30-minute to 1 hour window. Would you agree? Yeah, absolutely. So if you are hungry right before, to avoid digestive upset, keep it simple. Think of that mouth to muscle. Think of those quick carbohydrate sources and have some of those in your backpack, okay? And have some more complex things in your backpack, which we'll talk about. Cool. All right. We're going to hit recovery really quick and then go into our activity. Cool. So now you've just finished your training, you've just finished your competition. Usually we get in the van or our car, we drive home, we have to prepare dinner, whatever it may be. There's a lot of time that goes by where we might not be getting any nutrients into our system and we're missing out on that recovery window. Super huge, because if you miss out on that recovery window, you slow down your rate of recovery. You're not fully recovered for the next day, okay? How many people train or race 2 days in a row? I know I did as an athlete. Yep, absolutely. Cool. And sometimes 4 or 5 days in a row, right? So we gotta maximize this recovery. So this is where protein really comes into play. That's gonna be something different than what we talked about. We talked a lot about carbohydrates and fat. We still need carbs. Carbs are gonna be our main energy source. So when you use your muscles, you're using carbohydrates. So you have to replenish them first and foremost, okay? Then you need to add some protein in there to help rebuild and repair, right? And then always hydrate when you can. That's low-hanging fruit. So you want 2 to 4 times the amount of carbs and protein. Don't worry about the nitty-gritty to that, but just think about if you're just mixing a protein shake, for example. I see a lot for a convenience item, or a protein bar, okay? You're missing out on those carbohydrates. So you want more, you want 2 to 4 times more. This is something that I like to blend and just take with me, okay? Leave it in a little smoothie jar and have it in my backpack. You could do Greek yogurt and granola could be a great option. I have some other examples next, potentially. Yeah. You could have a sandwich, perhaps, making sure that you have some good protein sources on there. Maybe it's deli meat, grass-fed meat stick with a granola bar, piece of fruit. Greek yogurt or granola, like I said, you're looking for 2 to 4 times more carbohydrates than protein to maximize that recovery. All right. Let's see. A day in the life, potentially. It's gonna look a little different for everybody, but hopefully you wake up, you hydrate. Maybe at camp you guys are doing a light jog. I know we used to meet for a dynamic warm-up in the parking lot, get your body moving, and then you go have breakfast, get dressed, and you go on the hill, okay? So starting with hydration, then you're making a performance plate like we talked about, that athlete performance plate. You're having protein, fat, carbohydrates, and fiber. Then you're bringing your snacks and water to your training session. This is like if you're doing potentially 2-a-days, but you're bringing that food with you. So are you having simple carbohydrate sources to maximize that pre-training, right? And are you bringing post as well? And then during, keeping it simple, having a variety of snacks that you want to eat in your backpack that aren't going to freeze. Then you're going to recover hopefully with lunch. And you're also hitting a post-training recovery snack. So like we talked about, maybe you're bringing a shake, maybe you're bringing a yogurt and some granola, maybe you're bringing a sandwich or a bar. You're continuing to hydrate and eat wholesome snacks throughout the day, and then you're finishing with another performance plate. So FIS kids, when you go to camp, you have a lot of opportunities where you might be in charge of your fueling. I have a little resource on the end of your sheet that are some quick cooking, easy go-tos where you can partner up with your house potentially and build some good balanced meals there for you. So you're building performance plates while you're at camp, right? And you have some great snack choices as well. These are the travel-ready snacks, some different sources. This is at the end of your sheet. And then we're going to leave a little time for Q&A, make our energy balls. So before we go into the Q&A, I'm just going to introduce this because we'll get really excited. So this could be a quick recipe. Listen up. This is going to be a quick recipe that you guys can make at camp, you can make at home. Going for whole foods first, that provides you with all the energy that you need for pre-training or during. All right, there's not much protein in this recipe. It wouldn't be a great post snack unless you could pair it with something that had protein, okay? So we have oats. Oats are gonna be our carbohydrate source. We have a few different ones. These are old-fashioned oats. If you were at a continental breakfast, like staying at a hotel for one of your races or camps, you might have the oatmeal packets or like a box of cereal. That's gonna be a much more simple version. So this provides some complex carbs, some easy to access carbohydrate. Nut butter is going to provide good fat and protein, but not too much, okay? Just a little bit. Honey is another quick carbohydrate source. Maple syrup is also a great one. Dried fruit, same thing. Not a ton of fiber in these, but some good quick sugars from the fruit. These are craisins. Everybody loves chocolate, quick access sugar. Sweetens up these energy bites just a bit. And then if you want, so if you're not having a super intense training session, a little coconut flake for some good fats in there. So we're making sure to include that. This is optional. So if you want to make a ball that's going to fuel you for kind of immediate training or your race run, for example, maybe you're skipping out on the coconut, you're just doing a little bit. Because we don't want too much fat because it's a big log of energy, right? So you're going to come through and scoop from each of these, and then you'll go back, mix up your little energy bites, should make 1 or 2, and then you can enjoy that and go on with your day. But first, let's open it up to a Q&A. Anyone have questions?
Oh, question.
Any parents want to get us going? Yeah.
Oh,
I can check. I have the box. Yes. They might not be specifically gluten-free. Same question? Okay, all good. Any other questions? No?
Those balls can be with milk or
Say it again?
just water? Is good to mix these mix with milk or just water?
You don't need anything, but you could. So, great question. How you could turn this into like a overnight oats or muesli or something like that for a good breakfast, you'd add a liquid. I love that you brought that up. So, if you bought these ingredients at camp or at home, There's so many uses for these. So if you did a scoop of all these ingredients and then added milk or water or a dairy-free milk option, you could leave it overnight, and that would be a nice overnight oat breakfast or snack that you can bring. You mix it all up, set it in the fridge, and it's ready to go for you the next day. I love doing that, especially at camp when your mornings are early. You could also add just hot water to this mixture, and it will break down the oats a little bit if you didn't do it the night before, and then you'd have a bowl of oatmeal, for example. What other ways? You could put it in a big sheet tray and bake it and have like a homemade granola bar or granola. Yeah. Yeah. Good question. What else? Any questions? Nothing?
Where do sugars come in that?
Where do sugars come into everything? Yeah, carbohydrates, which is stored as glucose, exactly. So what have you played around with for sugars in your food, in your snacks? Nothing? No? Okay. What about if you look at that carbohydrate source list, have you used any of those? That will get broken down as sugar. Fruit? Yes? What are your go-tos?
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Smoothie every day. Nice. Cool. Are you getting, so we were just chatting about building a smoothie. So you're getting fruit, so you're getting carbohydrate, are you
Yeah,
putting?
I feel like fruit, I put peanut butter, I put
So a little fat, yep, a little protein. Yeah. Cool. Perfect. Nice. I like it. That's a great balance. Yeah. And that's breakfast or snack? Depends. Cool. Good.
In this summer, I should.
After training? Yeah. Awesome. Love it. Love it, love it. All right, if we don't have any questions, how do we want to do this? Just one table at a
I've got
time?
one more.
Yeah.
On average, like you guys are living and training between like 6,000 and 8,000. Has anything changed from a nutritional standpoint when you move to like sleeping and training at higher elevations?
Yeah. I have some tips on this for higher elevation, but a few of my takeaways is your energy needs increase in general and your hydration needs increase in general. So that source of carbohydrate, your needs are going to go up by quite a bit. So looking at more of that moderate to high intensity plate at a training camp at high altitude. So even though you're training gates just as you would at home, the environment has changed to a more intense environment, right? It's drier, it's higher, there's less oxygen, it's gonna be harder to recover. It's zapping all of our hydration, right? Our sweat rate, what we're losing through our water vapor when we're breathing. And yeah, so your environment becomes more intense. So you have to increase overall calories, increase overall carbohydrates, looking at that moderate to intense plate, and increase your water intake, which again, we didn't get into hydration tonight, but those would be some of my key takeaways for sure. And that goes into that athlete performance plate of, are you changing how much you're eating and what you're eating based on your training and competition environment, okay? Really important to not stick to the same thing. And at high altitude, this is one thing to note, oftentimes our appetite is suppressed a bit, and so you sort of have to fight through that to make sure you're getting enough energy. Because if we're operating at a deficit, you're decreasing your performance, your focus, your recovery, you're prone to get sick. A lot of kids get sick at camp or right when they come back, they're missing time off snow. So really critical. Does that answer?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. And what about like if you're starting an early morning training session, is there a way to supplement what you need before like a 2.5 to 3 hour window?
Yeah. So if you're having a super early training session, you're not going to wake up at 4 a.m., right? And make a nice balanced breakfast. But if we go back to that rate of digestion and think more of that pre-training food options, so we don't have as much time anymore. So you don't have to get this perfectly balanced snack. You're going a little simpler. So what would be your simple choices, right? So if you're making oatmeal, for example, maybe you're not adding lots of nuts and seeds to it. Maybe you're not adding Greek yogurt to it. Maybe you're keeping it more simple with some berries and some oats and a little bit of milk, for example. That's going to be a lot easier to digest. So you can think about that in your overnight oat formula, for example. But you're still getting something. If you're not a morning person and you're not wanting breakfast, we chose things like juice, grabbing a banana, where are those options? Right here. Making a quick bagel, maybe you're putting some jam on it instead of bacon and eggs, or instead of peanut butter, instead of avocado, right? Because those are making that bagel more complex and slower to digest. And also packing snacks. If you can't get a lot of food in before training, something is better than nothing, but having ample options in your backpack and in your jacket pocket, so that when you do start moving your body, getting outside and waking up, you have quick access to nutrients and nutrition for sure. Everyone's going to be different. I was always a breakfast person. I woke up hungry, ready to go, but a lot of my teammates weren't that way. So finding what works for you, but knowing how it impacts your performance and what your needs are. So choosing something simple if you're going to wake up with 30 minutes before you have to load the lift, but you're getting something in, and having options in your backpack, like some of these perhaps, okay? And then when your training session is multiple hours, right? Like most of ours are, we're not just eating for performance anymore, we're starting to get into that meal time. So on race day, are you skipping lunch? Are you missing that performance plate? Or are you getting some fat sources, some protein sources? Are you building these balanced snacks that can fit that bill? Because you're gonna get hungry. It's not just energy for my run, and then I don't care, and then energy for my next run, and then I don't care. They're long days. So staying on top of it and understanding that time frame. So the closer you are to your training or your race run, the simpler your choices are. And when you have that time in between, like between first and second run, trying to get some more complex options in there. Yeah?
Is there any way, my kids are asking too, but can you share the slides so they can be printed as well?
Yeah, we can figure that out for sure. And this is being recorded as well. But absolutely. All right, Grace, do you have any ideas on how to get the